Good afternoon. I think we're just waiting for a few more people to come in. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this brown bag. I was actually quite shocked by the name brown bag. Like, it reminded me of like a bum, like, you know, holding like a bottle of booze. So I've never done a brown bag session before. So I've decided to balance what we disclose based on what we're building in our venture builder, but also I will also try to be as interesting as Carlo was with regards to the complexity of what we're trying to build. Now, it's going to be a high bar, so please forgive me. I am definitely not as mathematically inclined as him. I'm coming at this from the user experience perspective of the challenges that exist in the adoption of DLT blockchain technologies. If there's anything I say that technically is out of place, feel free to yell at me. Like I said, I'm coming at this from the user experience perspective and then from the business perspective. So I'm not I would say a Web3 native. I'm coming at this as challenges that exist just generally when it comes to the adoption of technology. So my name is Daniel Fozzati. I am one of the founding partners of a Web3 venture builder that can't get the slides to work. A Web3 venture builder called the Building Blocks. I've got 3 other partners as well who are experts in their respective fields, and together we come together to put together the essential elements, the building blocks of what makes a business really compelling. And we have a portfolio of about 4 ventures across media, entertainment, education, and finance. Today, I will talk to you about the background research that went into the finance venture. So, as we know, and as we know is very, very commonly lamented across social media, but also in mainstream media, Web3 has an adoption problem. We've been sort of surviving a crypto winter, and for better or for worse, there are very bad reasons why it's been a winter, and there are very good reasons. Because at any classic adoption cycle, we kind of have emerged out of the hype at the top of NFT and the mania, and now we're in the sort of the deep gunnels of disillusionment, and hopefully, people that is forcing consolidation, that is forcing the industry to think what really matters, and also getting rid of some of the things that got us here in the first place. And this is all normal, of course, right? This happened during the Web 2 adoption cycle. And so I think now it's time to kind of take stock and to reflect what the technologies are fit for purpose for, but also to think about what are the things that we can do better to then drive the next multiple billions of people that have to adopt Web3. So you've got these 3 puzzle pieces, right? You've got the negative sentiment that I was just referring to. You've got a use case issue where people's imagination has been limited to crypto punks or kiddies, and I think while those use cases make for interesting headlines, I think the challenge that you have there is that you have the negative association. So when you have sort of the traditional industries looking at the adoption of the technology, they smear it all with one brush, and they say, well, that's just for people who like to wear weird clothes and own weird NFTs that don't have any value. Oh, and by the way, look at the value of those NFTs now. What is the intrinsic value? And you find out, well, just like most things in life, value is what you associate with it. It's the society that projects the value onto it. So then you have a rush towards real world assets. And that's what we're seeing now. In this trough of disillusionment, we're seeing people taking assets from the real world, whether it's property, whether it's film, whether it's music, and we're thinking, okay, take this real-world asset and tokenize it, and that way there's no way to argue whether or not there's something of value there. But the thing in the middle, which of course I put there on purpose because it draws your attention, is that no one has been thinking about the key aspect of DLT. Now, you have a tension, and we'll get to that later, but what you have is kind of an arena of dogma that has built up around the space of how key management should function. Those of you that may be familiar with something that came out a few months ago with regards to Ledger. So Ledger's a famous key management solution or a wallet solution. The challenge that you have is that you have people wanting to own their keys and therefore own their crypto, but you also have people that want the convenience of a custodial wallet. A quick poll, I did this previously in another fintech class. Who here actually uses a self-custody wallet? %50. Okay. I'd say it's about around 50%. So I don't know how many people are online. Can we ask that question online? I just want to keep these numbers front of mind during this talk. Now, the challenge that you have here is that people are lazy, right? And you really don't want to mess with the laziness. You want to design for the laziness, because laziness is great. Laziness brings adoption, and most people are lazy. Now, self-custody, theoretically, is great. And of course, if you think about the principles of Web3, you don't want to replicate the past and move over to custodial solutions. And I get that. Again, I'm not a crypto native, but I understand that we've got to balance this. So we've got to figure out what to do with keys. Is that in the chat?
Yeah, it's in Apple.
Thank you. So we've got to figure out what to do with keys. Oh, thanks. So, I think there's
around
50-50?
50-50. Around 75%.
Use
From the poll, from the respondents.
Excellent. So, do you use self? Most people are
Yeah, at least on mine, 75%.
Great. Okay, I'll come back to that in a bit. Okay. So we've got to do something about the keys. So we had as a venture builder, we reflected on this. So we've got these two worlds. You have the world of self-custody and trustless systems, and then you have the current world, which is where trust exists today. Now we can happily debate this. I would love to hear people's opinions on this, particularly around the role of trust in a trustless world, which is what DLT espouses. But we have these two spheres where you have people that believe that self-custody and that there's no need to trust, and then we have the institutions that exist in today's world that sell trust. And so as a venture builder, we saw an opportunity here, and we thought, hang on, is there a role for these trusted institutions to play in this game? So we went through a bunch of different ideas, and we settled on this one, being the single biggest blocker to mass adoption of the Web3 economy is key management. So during our research, we were trying to figure out the size of this issue. Now, on the one hand, if you think about the user journey of the entire Web3 economy, it starts sort of on step one. If you had to sketch it out, right, on the user journey, it starts with the wallet. And so already on step one, the whole thing falls over. Well, then everything downstream of that experience is going to fall over as well. So intuitively, it feels like a pretty massive market, a pretty massive problem, and therefore a pretty massive opportunity. So we looked at a survey from Kaspersky that was done, I think, 16 countries. It was pretty comprehensive, and this was the one stat that kind of jumped out. And this has been reaffirmed several times, but this is the one that we'll always come back to, is that like overwhelmingly this is the main issue. So if you solve this problem even just a little bit, you're doing better. You're already doing better. But again, remember, we have to figure out how to address some of the initial tenets of DLT to make sure that we're not replicating the past. So I'm sure you guys have seen this graph. I love it because to me, I can answer like almost any question by looking at this graph of DLT. So this is essentially wallet adoption over time. And I believe we are in 1998. Yeah. So the year is just after 1998, tracking with IP addresses, so internet adoption and wallet adoption as a percentage of the population. So the year, it's very early days. I'm seeing some puzzled looks. I'm just going to pause for a second to see if there's anyone's.
I thought more people using it.
Well, not in 1998.
But even now, right? It's 1 billion.
As a percentage.
There's two different time scales.
Yeah.
I know. I'm talking about like the present day internet. How much is it?
But it stops at 2000.
Yeah. It's up to 2000. So.
Look at the top
Oh,
line.
it stops at 2000.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to pause there for a moment and see if anyone's got any more questions. Just, this make sense?
You have data for 2023.
Sorry?
That stops at 2022.
Yes.
Do you have data for 2023?
I think we do. You can ask him. So this is the thing that gives me a lot of comfort because it's very early days. That means there's a lot of mistakes that can still be made, and there's a lot of opportunity to still capitalize on. So focusing on the problem at hand, right? So if the keys aren't properly managed, well then you've got a lot of asset loss. And when it comes to asset loss, you need a system that both respects the ability to keep your own key, but doesn't insert itself too intimately, quote unquote, between the wallet and the user. So there are, I'm sure you guys are aware, and I know there's a few researchers in the audience here today, in the MPC space and multisig, you need to create a solution that allows the user to make a mistake, but also does not remove the ability for the user to have any autonomy over their own keys. So think of that as a requirement, and we'll pick up on a few as we go forward. So as part of this space, we did some fancy analysis. Some of the researchers in this room did this for us, actually. And we were trying to identify exactly what type of user, how much they're holding, and how much they're transacting. Now, I've purposefully taken away a lot of the interesting stuff because that's protected and valuable. But I'll talk to you about the insights. So we have kind of two need states that have emerged. You've got people who move crypto around because they're investing in things, and there's people who move crypto around because they're buying things. And then this happens on the respective chains at different quantities. And so to understand the size of this market, you have to think, okay, well, if you're solving this problem, so if you're addressing the problem for people who are investing, but then you're also trying to address the problem for something as small as, like, donating to a charitable cause, you need a solution that addresses the entire spectrum. And so this gets us to, like, I would say the overarching requirement for what a key management solution needs to solve for, which is it has to solve everything from moving billions of dollars over a chain to, your daughter earning coins on her favorite game. And this is what brings us up to present day. So this is a quote from Lehman. For those of you who don't know, he's the co-founder and CEO of Hedera Hashgraph and Swirls Labs. So he invented Hedera Hashgraph, and we're working very closely with Lehman, very happy to be working with him on a solution that addresses some of these tensions that I've been talking about. But, like, you need something that addresses this entire spectrum. I'm going to pause here for just a moment just to take any questions in case any of this is unclear before I keep on going. Excellent. So now we're going to get to the point in the discussion where, because this is a live project, I can't get into some of the nitty-gritty details because some of it hasn't been agreed yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a bit of rough and ready, and I'm going to ask you guys about how you would address the challenges that I've been describing over the past 10-15 minutes. And so this is a classic tension triangle. There are 5 principles on the left here, and the idea is you can only pick 3, right? So for those of you who picked a self-custody solution, I think the numbers are not in favor of you, I'm sorry to say, given the online poll and given those have said it. So you guys are using self-custody, but you're the minority based on everyone that's put their hand up. We've described all the issues when it comes to using a self-custody solution, and we know that a lot of people can't be trusted with their keys because they make a lot of mistakes. What's the alternative? So if we pick a secure solution that is easy and scalable, but we miss out on trusted or self-custody, you guys won't be happy, right? But what would you have to do if you're using self-custody to use an alternative? Would it be massive improvements in UX? Would it be trust? What if there was somebody behind the keys that you were giving up, that you could say, okay, I trust that entity to hold my keys? So,
Is that not called a bank?
it's called a bank. Are you planted? Yeah, that's called a bank. So, but what do we do with these banks, right? I thought there is no need for trust in a trustless world, right? Or is there a need for trust, like I was saying in the beginning?
Well, you're trusting developers in the first place anyways. No?
Trusting, sorry?
The developers of protocols anyways.
Of products?
The developers of the protocols.
Well, we are trusting a quorum, right? Because it's not just it's not just a singular developer.
Yeah, but still trusting. When you're trusting a bank, you're trusting not one person. No?
Yeah, but on top of that, you're trusting a government because banks operate judiciously. They are beholden to political systems. They are symbols of trust. People go to bed at night because they just paid their mortgage because they just paid a bank. So, and that relates back to like questions of sovereignty and trust.
Trust and reputation.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm offering here, without describing it in detail, is essentially both TradFi and DeFi coming together to solve each other's problems. You have the TradFi world, which we know is archaic, and if for anyone who's used any established bank in their lifetime, know that the systems don't work. They simply are just broken. And we also know that, given all the crises of late, that these banks that exist are but mere symbols of trust. There's nothing actually behind them. They can crumble overnight, but they're symbols of trust that leaders of countries and political systems place their trust into, and therefore the population places their trust into them. But then you also have the DeFi world, which says, well, it's trustless, right? There's no need. And then you have things like, well, FTX, and et cetera, et cetera. So how do we sort of get the best of both worlds? How do we make sure that the TradFi world can come along for the ride and has a role to play? But then also, how do we cut out all the cholesterol, all the fat that the TradFi world has, and leverage some of these advantages of DeFi? So I feel like you said a bank earlier, so you must have an idea. What should be done?
I've got a few ideas on digesting, but like I think
like I don't know if I'm the right person to speak to. I'm definitely opposed to, like, I see the logic behind it.
Yeah.
It's like what I'm doing is getting my like biased mindset to like digest this logic in an unbiased way, because like I think the whole self-custody thing, like, I wouldn't want to give my keys away to anyone I have a trusted party store with. But like, yeah, so I think a weak idea of just like digest it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. What wallet do you use out of curiosity?
I've got a ledger, but I've got lots of several different ones.
Yeah. Well, do you know that thing that happened a few months ago with Ledger when they announced that new functionality?
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Yeah, it was like terrifying in a sense. But like I don't have one sort of wallet with all my stuff.
Say it again, sorry.
I wouldn't have one wallet with all my
Right.
kind of all in it and spread across several different.
Right. But what would you do? Like, let's say, like, you're doing quite well in crypto. You know, you're holding your assets, and increasingly, you're holding a large proportion of your wealth, using the methods that you've described. How would your parents go about doing that?
In terms of like how would they store it?
Yeah. Like, let's say you were like, Mom, Dad, I've been doing so well in crypto. You should really get into this thing. How would they even start?
Well, I think in terms of like starting, they would probably open like a MetaMask or some sort of like wallet provided like that. I couldn't imagine, like, if we're talking about like parents, for example. I mean, what are they going to go like how deep into say DeFi?
Totally. Okay. So they're going to start on MetaMask. So then you're going to load them up. You're going to put some of their wealth on there. Who do they call? They make a mistake. Does MetaMask have a number? Hey, MetaMask. Like, what happens when there's a mistake? So I'll jump ahead just to my next point here. So like, so we We need to solve this, okay? We need to like all just like chill and think for a second that humans are humans, and that even though things are mathematically bomb-proof, okay? At the end of the day, we're humans and we just want to be lazy. And we're gonna make a mistake. So if we're gonna make a mistake and we want to be lazy, and when I need to call somebody because something messed up on my MetaMask, we've got to figure out a system that does that. So there has to be a role somewhere in the stack. Now, I get it. I feel you. We don't want to get these guys caused the financial crisis, right? They can't be trusted. They didn't even go to jail. They just got bailed out. But who else do we put in? Should we create new institutions? That takes a long time. So what's the solution here? Because we want your parents to get in on crypto because you're doing so well. The point here is that we've got an incredible amount of promise in how these technologies, what these technologies can enable for society. They can cut out a lot of mistakes from the past, from TradFi. But if we don't create a role for the way that humans actually function, which is by looking at a brand and saying, I trust that brand, then and we just say that everything is trustless and there's no role for trust, then we risk this technology never being adopted, and then people will just continue to create silos of value, and nothing will iterate. So we need to again compromise and bring TradFi in to enable them to use these technologies. Now, they're making moves. You know, there's a JP Morgan Onyx. There's loads of players that are entering this space from the banks. But this is the entry point. The key management is the entry point. Has anyone here used an MPC solution or a multi-sig solution? No?
Yeah, multi-sig, like mostly uses safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
MPC I haven't tried, but I heard about Base new wallets apparently. So
Sorry?
Coinbase
Yeah.
has created a wallet that apparently uses a MPC solution, so you don't have full custody of it, or you have full custody, but they have a way to help you recover if you're.
I saw that.
But I haven't tried yet.
So they've got a number.
It's more than a number. They have a
Yeah,
way
yeah.
to allow you to still be trustless toward them and still have some recovery mechanism. So it's, because the number is nice, but at MetaMask, even if they had a number, they couldn't do much more with it if you lose your keys.
Absolutely. I looked at that solution from Coinbase. Who's keeping the key?
From what I understood, like you have your keys, just you have a way to recover access to your accounts if you can't use your wallet because you lost your keys.
But that means they have a copy of the key.
Not really. They have a way to trigger a system that allows you to reuse this account and use those keys. So it's a multi-sig wallet sort of.
So what's right?
I used Argent, for instance, also that has
Yeah.
a similar mechanism, but probably less technical from what I understood.
Yeah.
Argent, I understand it's super simple. They don't really have the keys, but they have a mechanism if you don't use your wallet for a certain time. So you have this group of guardians that can allow you to react.
Yeah. So the social recovery. Yeah. So that's a great jumping off point. So conceptually, we're going from you go from a scenario where we've looked at Argent quite a bit, and so social recovery makes sense. Like if you're thinking about it between, like if all of us in a room, as fans of crypto, knew how to be guardians for these keys, makes sense, but you'd have to establish a trust mechanism that is completely implicit, right? It's completely, there's no documentation. It's like, okay, well, you're my friend, therefore I'm going to pick you as my key guardian. But maybe we don't become friends anymore. I have to revoke you. But also there's no burden placed on that guardian to recover the key. Because if I don't respond to the request in a timely manner, or if the majority of your guardians don't respond, well then there's no way to recover the key either. That seems like a arbitrary way to get control of your assets again. Again, there's no number.
The number of your friends. I hope.
Yeah, but if they're available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question I have is, I don't know really where you're going with that, but the question is, how much, I feel like argent limitation is not really the trust I have. Nobody has a problem with the trust assumption on argent. The problem is still details on UX, the fact that you cannot really, for instance, I tried to manage NFTs from an argent wallet, and it was a mess, because it's not really an address, it's a smart contract wallet, it doesn't have all the functionalities. It's becoming more standardized, but you see what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
argent problem at the moment, at least for me, is not the trust assumption, it's the problem that
Is that the what, sorry?
the UX is not as seamless as it could be on Web2, so it's still annoying. And in the end, it's easier for me to use MetaMask and be careful than use Argent and Ledger for Ledger.
No, absolutely. But would you run your entire financial life on Argent?
I would never put all my well-being anywhere.
I think this is the challenge, right? We have to get either people are going to run 100%, the rubber has to hit the road. Eventually, the financial life has to live 100%. You can't when it comes to the adoption of these technologies, there's no halfway house. It's like, okay, I put maybe 10% of my wealth, and that's just playing money. But at the end of the day, I still use a traditional bank.
But you cannot either trust traditional banks, that's why people buy real estate and so on, right? So
Yeah, but
you have to diversify anyway. There is nothing of value that has fully guaranteed value, because as you said at the beginning, value is a social construct, so it could be withdrawn at any point.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. But the assets that people diversify into typically are underwritten. And typically the systems that are underwriting them are political systems. So if you invest in stocks, or you go inside of a bank, or if you buy property, all three of those traditional systems are underwritten by the government. It's a government guarantee. The argument needs to develop. It has to go either people go 100% and they show us that they go 100%, and I want to see it, and they don't, because they can't, and they also don't trust themselves. And that's the objective here. People need to trust themselves 100% to use it. And I think even though Argent is very interesting from a UX perspective, and I use it myself, and I think they did something very avant-garde with regards to account abstraction. I think it was recently quoted at the first account abstraction meetup in Paris a month or so ago by Vitalik. Vitalik said Argent is a good example of how to do this. But Vitalik himself has said that trustlessness, trust, just because things are trustless doesn't mean that there is no role for trust, which means, and if we think about what trust is not an objective concept. It is an abstract. It's a human one. We need to, by proxy, we need to think, okay, and maybe Argent will get there. Maybe they will build up such an amazing brand of trust that people will put 100% of their life in it. But at the moment, we're not there. And I don't think any player in the Web3 space is getting there or making the moves to get there. Do we think that this space can mature based on trustlessness? Is there a role for trust?
Yeah, I think there's a clear role for trust expansion. I wonder if what you're trying to build comes, so people that want to be self-hosted, like doing complete self-custody and all, continue to do so, and you just want to bring TradFi closer to them, or whether you think that people that are doing self-custody should renounce some of what they are doing. I think that's where
We operate a big church. No, I think those who operate self-custody are a rounding error. Like in the total spectrum of adoption of this technology, I literally think they could like fill this building.
Well, but there's something like in economics, you have a concept of potential competition, right?
Yeah.
So even if somebody's not competing with you, the possibility that they might disciplines the rest of the players as if they were competing. So similarly, the possibility that people may resort to self-custody and self-hosted mechanisms at any moment, perhaps that imposes discipline upon the trusted players.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that will play out. I think there's also a reality that we need to contend with that is beyond our own personal preferences. Talks about it a little bit here. But as this space matures and we get out of people basically using COVID stimulus checks to open their crypto accounts, which is basically what happened for the adoption during that time. So as we get out of that time, and this hopefully, like if we do our job well and this becomes super, super mainstream, we actually want the governments to want to interrogate the accounts. And in order to interrogate the accounts, we're going to need to give up some control. Because if they don't want to interrogate the accounts, that means that we're irrelevant. And if they do want to interrogate the accounts, that means we are so powerful that it's probably worth interrogating the accounts. So we'll have to build a technical mechanism to do so. It's a catch-22. If we do our job well and people adopt DLT, the government will need to be able to interrogate. Exactly. So it's this thing of like, we want to do amazing stuff, and if we do stuff that actually is worthy of mainstream adoption, and everybody, becomes crypto millionaires again, then that means the government is going to want to intervene, which means we'll have to. So the adoption will induce a level of scrutiny. Or we can continue being sort of rounding errors, and then nobody cares. What is your choice?
The thing I'm working on currently mostly is CBDCs, and many countries are looking at how they can use some of these technologies. But one of the key problems they have is the wallet design. So it's already at play, because I think it's now clear that there is no way for the DLT to not be one of the technology that are looked at to build the rest of finance. Part is crypto as is, but part is new venue, infrastructures and so on.
Yeah.
And this compromise needs to be solved. So yeah, there's clear demand for this. I agree that but one it's you could ask like how much crypto will be the place where all the relevant action happen, or new infrastructure that have more visibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, this question of having some of the benefits is linked to the trust part of the trustlessness, but it doesn't need to be as trustless as in Bitcoin to be valuable for the current financial system.
That's very well put. Yeah.
Because for Bitcoin, it's a need, because otherwise it's very proposition from those. It needs to be trustless to progress.
That's great. We should talk afterwards.
If you want.
I'm supposed to ask for questions, but I've already been asking for questions the whole time. So We've got about a little bit less than 10 minutes left. I'd love to take more questions, if there are any. And are there any more?
Just more question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, when you were building the solution, did decentralized compliance come to mind as like a balance between trust and trustlessness and trusted systems?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Decentralized compliance,
Yeah.
like decentralized KYC or something.
Oh yeah. Very much so. So in the spectrum of bringing the TradFi to the DeFi, like that is a thing, a component that has to be, that I believe in order to respect the tenets of DeFi needs to be figured out. Because otherwise you're kind of kicking the can down the road and you're just creating a centralized bottleneck for one player with a disproportionate amount of control in the system to do KYC, and then that just doesn't seem like smart. So that needs to be figured out. The flip side is that the TradFi players need to have the dexterity of a technology stack to be able to accept different KYC components and still maintain their compliance. So again, going back to the trust element, banks need to maintain their banking licenses. They maintain their banking licenses by demonstrating proper due diligence and due care. Due care is a result of having processes that are scrutinizable and auditable, et cetera. If you are swapping out KYC components on the fly, you need a stack that is adaptive and, well, yeah, where you're able to do so. But you also need a dexterity of thought because it's a political, to give a banking license is as much as a technical task as it is a political one. So you need political dexterity of thought to say, okay, well, we're going to give this banking license. They're going to do KYC in this way in this jurisdiction, but they're going to do KYC another way in another jurisdiction. It's trust. Again, these are mostly irrational forces that technically are probably equivalent, but they need to adapt based on their jurisdiction. But that's a very good question. It has to. That is something that an area where the DeFi and the TradFi need to figure something out. And that's something that we're looking at. Excellent. Well, if there's no further questions, thank you very much. Niall's off to actually work on the thing that yeah. No. Yeah. No, he's actually going to the call where we're actually working on this exact thing. So.
Sending on a cliffhanger. I thought you were going to show. Okay, this is the solution of the trilemma.
This is where you give it for the next
The space.
presentation.
The space is too hot right now to disclose a lot of detail about how this works. We're working very closely and very happy to be working closely with Swirls Labs on one way to solve this problem.
So would you come to present later in the future once you feel that you can share the details?
If I'm allowed to do so.
Will you be welcome?
Yeah, I would very much welcome the invitation.
So we can solve that cliffhanger. So we know how it ends.
Maybe as broad, is the question more technology solution or is more regulatory design, as you're saying, like having the KYC with different actors, probably not taking the responsibility. So where do you think is the most win that can be done? Because we can see that there is already a lot of technologies that allow some compromise, not fully compromise, but like some recovery mechanism without losing the trustlessness. So we know that can be done.
I think so. I'm happy that Niall left because otherwise he will throw things at me. So I can say the truth now.
Where do you see the opportunity?
So I don't think there's like a like, in this space, I don't believe there to be somebody who is like the arbiter for trustlessness, and then he throws a tomato at you if you're not trustless enough. So I'm more inclined, like, I think there's practical solutions. So I think we need to, in order to get to the mainstream adoption, I think we need to compromise. I think there's going to be compromises in the trustlessness in order to solve the user experience issues and to make it easy for people. If that means compromising on trustlessness, I think that's a good compromise. I think there are some technologies, to your question of like, there are some technologies that haven't been invented yet, particularly around like zero knowledge proofs, that are useful, but are not mature enough right now to kind of appease both worlds. So we may need to compromise, like on KYC, for the moment to get us there. Maybe we don't. It would be amazing if we didn't have to. But I think that for the greater good of adoption, we may need to. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I don't think there's anyone throwing a tomato because it's not trustless enough.
I think an analogy you can give probably is with the internet. To be able to access and use the internet, you need to trust internet service providers.
Yeah.
Who make it more user-friendly, easier for you to connect. Rather than the past, you have to go and
Exactly.
well, if you were at the very beginnings of the internet, you have to deal with a lot of technical issues.
Exactly. Actually, that's a great example. So, like, I don't know if I'm going to take a wild guess that none of you actually know about AOL.com. So, like, AOL.com is like an example of a compromise, right? Where like the whole thing was like fully vertically integrated and took all the pain out of a lot of the issue of going on the internet. Now, it was terrible, and we had to live through it, and it's gone now because we have a lovely internet, but it was like an interim step to get adoption, because that was the way that like most of the US, because that's what AOL is, like America Online, right? So it was a compromise to get to that insane adoption. So I'm not saying we have to make AOL.com. I'm saying there has to be some compromise.
Okay, one more minute. Any closing remarks?
I very much welcome healthy debate on this, because I don't think the quality of debate, I think the debate is too dogmatic. And when we explored doing developing this venture, the dogma, the healthy debates that we had internally really drove a quality of thinking around the space that I wish was more prolific publicly. Because I think the discussion that happens publicly is superficial, but also does not take into account realities of what have to be overcome for mainstream adoption of the technology. Basically, let's have the debate in the public forum so that we can get on with mainstream adoption. I think we have people problems. I don't think we have technology problems when it comes to adoption.
Your social media, if you can share it, or people to...
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Fuzzy Daniel, or also on the Building Blocks LinkedIn and Twitter as well. But that's on the Twitter and LinkedIn pages as well. Thank you very much to the DSF Foundation for the kind invitation. I look forward to speaking to all of you, and also feel free to reach out to me afterwards as well.